Hey, all you beautiful YTPCers and over a pipe pipers and all you good people. Now that I got the pipe in my hand, I want to emphasize every single point. So in this series from the Muletown Pipe Show 2022 over at the Briar Works, wonderful, awesome host, we had an opportunity to watch Jeremy from Cornell and Deal, who's their master blender, actually give us a blending demonstration live and in person and in living color. And it was a blast. And so we were super excited to see that. So watch this. Please note that the audio was pretty trash because, of course, it's just how anything happens live. There's signal, from his wireless mic to the speaker at the Briar Works. And, there was distortion, all kinds of stuff. I cleaned all that up as best I could. If you want to know how bad it was, wait till the end and I'll let you hear the difference between the raw unedited version and the edited version. I think you'll be kind of surprised. But without further ado, let's get to Jeremy and check out this blending demonstration.
Yeah, like Pete said, long-time friendship between Cornell and Deal and the Briar Works fellas, and we really got to know each other putting together the Briar Works blends. And when they opened up this workshop and the retail location, I put together a blend to do a blending demonstration like this. It was the very first time that I'd ever done a blending demonstration. And at the time, we just named the blend 511 North Main after the address of the place. But when they then decided to do the Muletown show, Pete was like, hey, can we do that blend as like the Muletown mixture and have it available at the show? So this is basically the blend that I put together for it, and the tints that we have available over at the Cornell and Deal table. It is a Virginia blend. It is a pretty complex blend of a bunch of different kinds of Virginia, and then a very, very small amount of Briar. So we start off with a base of Canadian bright Virginia. You can see that light golden color, but with Virginias, that light color is a good indication of high sugar, lower nicotine. The darker Virginias tend to have the opposite. So the darker the Virginia, the lower the sugar content, and higher the nicotine. It comes from upper stock positions, you get those darker colors, and mid stock positions that you're going to get these brighter colors that have a little more sugar, a little less nicotine, a little less oil. So this makes up the majority of the blend, about 75% of the blend. Whenever I'm blending, it's all about even distribution and economy of motion, and I'm not ever trying to crush or crunch the tobacco. Real loosey-goosey with the fingers and light, easy movements to kind of matriculate the smaller quantities through the bases. So in this case, the base, this bright Virginia, 24% sugar, only about 2.5% nicotine. The next thing that we're going to add
That's right. You couldn't
about 4 ounces of this 2015 red Virginia. You can see the color difference here. So the bright, you've got this really light sort of hay-like flavor and almost like a croissant sort of sweetness. The deeper redder Virginia almost brings in a ton of like molasses. This again is from 2015 crop. This is actually the same red Virginia that we used for the original run of Carolina Red Flake. So what I want to do when I'm adding smaller quantities is I want to get as even a layer over the top of whatever the base is as possible. Next we've got Red Virginia Cavendish. This is a 2017 Red Virginia that we have steamed to get this darker color. Caramelizes the sugars that are there, removes some of the nicotine, and it makes this leaf kind of produce a thicker, cloudier smoke. It has a really nice flavor still, but it adds a little bit of a roasty, toasty kind of element to the Virginia. Just going to go ahead and open all these. Next we've got some Red Virginia. Again, the 2017 Red Virginia, but you can really see the difference in the color between the Red Virginia Cavendish and what we've done here. More lightly steamed it and then pressed it and sliced it. Opportunity for the leaf to ferment a bit, and we've added a small amount of casing, a little bit of honey, and actually some tea made from whole cloves and allspice. It adds a really nice, like, spicy sort of element to the mouthfeel, and particularly through the nose. It also brings out a lot of the tangy, tart flavors that Red Virginia can have. We've got a similar sort of product that, believe it or not, this is actually bright Virginia that has been steamed and pressed, and you can see the much higher sugar content has yielded a much more caramelized color. Again, some really nice tartness that comes from this. We leave it a little chunkier because of the sugar content. It presses and adheres much more readily. It also adds an opportunity for there to be something that, rather than burning at the same rate as all of the rest of these finer cuts, it actually slowly smolder and just sort of imbue its essence through the course of the bowl. So you're going to kind of get this added tanginess, tartness that is slowly smoldering throughout the bowl as you smoke. And lastly, pure St. James Parish Perique. This is a really, really labor-intensive, incredible tobacco that is processed for us by a farm down in St. James Parish. From seed to final product in the barrel is all carried out by 3 people. And these guys plant, they sucker, they harvest, they do everything by hand. It is a labor of love, and it is a labor for sure. 3rd generation Perique growing farm, and the tobacco is planted, it's grown, it's harvested, it's cured in a barn, air cured, and then after the air curing process, then break all the leaves off of the stalk, and you tie it into hands, and you wash the leaf and allow it to take on moisture overnight, and then it gets rolled into bundles and pressed in an ex-bourbon barrel. And every 3 months, all of the tobacco gets pulled out of the barrel, and the bundles get broken up, not like broken up, but they're pressed really tightly. You have to work them to loosen them back up to expose them to oxygen again, and then it goes back into the barrel for another 3 months. This happens 3 times over the course of a barrel of Perique. It is a long, labor-intensive, totally non-mechanical process. The only way to do it is to do this by hand. There's not enough Perique here to really add a whole lot of Perique flavor, but the thing that I'm adding this for in this instance is because Perique is so heavily fermented, and because it has such a unique fermentation character, it can actually act almost like a sourdough starter or something in a blend. It can kind of kickstart fermentation. So I wanted to add this just enough to actually help this blend over time as it cellars begin to ferment beyond what any of these leaves individually would be able to do on their own. So we got all of our components here, and like I said before, loosey-goosey, easy. I don't want to crush anything. I'm dealing with relatively dry tobacco because we're going to add moisture to it here in a second. So I'll take my fingers and put it directly on the bottom of my table or my working surface. And you can see I'm just jazz hands, jazz fingers, just working everything together very gently. Get a lot of different colors, a lot of different colors of different leaves. And so I'm almost looking for like that kaleidoscope effect where I see the distribution of all of the different tones and shades of these different components equally mixed through. When you get a lot of different sizes of cuts or difference in textures, it can take a little bit of time to make sure you don't have a pocket of this or that thing hiding out. Believe it or not, it's actually more difficult to get even distribution with a smaller quantity, like blending a pound like this, than it is to make 50 or 60 pounds of something. Once everything is evenly distributed, I've got a very, very slightly sweet casing. This is honey and a couple of different kinds of vodka that have neutral but sweet, sort of pillowy, soft flavors. Believe it or not, it's a whipped cream flavored vodka and a marshmallow flavored vodka. But the end result is not going to smell or taste like whipped cream and marshmallows. These are neutral and sort of nondescript sweeteners. They basically are there to add sort of a pillowy softness to the mouthfeel, and the vodka itself is going to evaporate very quickly. The alcohol will, and it'll leave these flavors kind of embedded in the leaf. There's also a little bit of honey in this. Add a small amount. And I can begin to be a little faster and a little more aggressive. Just keep my fingers going constantly, so I'm never crushing anything. I'm always coaxing it. I'm always just gently nudging the tobacco in the directions that I want it to go. Evenly distribute this moisture. But as the tobacco takes the moisture on, you can begin to feel like it's a little more. It's not ever going to crush or crumble to dust at this point. And it's when you add the moisture that you can really begin to smell like all of the different aromas that you've put together kind of coming up at you, and the alcohol actually brings some of that out of this leaf and transfers it a little bit. Alcohol is a wonderful solvent, and so it can take oils and flavor compounds from one leaf and help to transfer it to other leaves. So the alcohol, while it's carrying the flavors of the casing and the effects of the casing, it's also helping to marry the flavors of the individual components that make up the blend. And after a short period of time of just allowing the air dry back down to a smokable moisture, then I'll put this in this jar and we'll set it up by the counter just like we did the first 2 times. So you can actually taste what this blend tastes like basically straight off the table up at the front register. And then we had some tins from the Muletown mixture 2019. Unfortunately, those were all sold, but those of you who can taste a little bit of what happens to this blend with some time in a tin. And then we've got tins that are available blended earlier this month for the show. That's what we got going on. You guys have questions? Yes, just on a much larger scale. But still the same concept and all done by hand the same way. Yes, yeah, we don't have any mechanical blending. The differences that you would see are rather than in a little plastic tub and blending a pound at a time, we have a table that's about the size of this with a steel tub, and so you can actually blend down the whole table. But yeah, still done by hand, still with the jazz fingers. Any other questions? You need alcohol as a carrier, because if you use water as a carrier, then rather than really penetrating deeply into the leaf like alcohol can, it just kind of sits on the top of the lamina. Alcohol helps to really penetrate deep into the leaf and matriculate those flavors through the veins and the irrigation system of the leaf, the way that it transfers chlorophyll and moisture when it's in the ground growing. And so the end result is that those flavors are really, really married with the natural oils of the tobacco in a way that you wouldn't get if you use just water as a carrier. Also, alcohol, because of its lower boiling point, it flashes off more quickly, so you get back down to a usable moisture content much more quickly, and the flavors that you want get left behind in a more natural tasting way. Any other questions? Yes. Yeah. Now there are bourbon flavorings, and I'm sure that there are manufacturers that use them. But anytime that we're using bourbon or vodka or anything like that, it's something that you can buy at the liquor store. So the next process, after you get it down to a moisture that you would want to tin it at, this is still a little wet for that. It'll be a little bit, maybe an hour or so before it's really ready to go into the jar. But at that point, we would tub it up into a container that can be transferred to our packaging department, which is the front portion of our building. And then a person would weigh out 2 ounces into a tin. They would put a tin insert and a lid on and get all of the tobacco into tins with the tin insert and the lid stacked up next to our seaming machine that runs a seam around the top. And then it goes through that machine and gets date stamped. And then the next step is labels. And those are also applied by hand. So we use glue stick, believe it or not. Stack up, stagger like 10 or 12 labels and glue stick, and then one by one apply it to the tin, and it goes around like that, and then over caps, and then it gets packed into 36 count boxes and transferred to our distribution. It depends on the size of the batch. It depends on a number of factors, but if if we're talking about this blend, we started blending the Muletown mixture at the beginning of the week, and it was going into tens, I think, the middle of the week. With Virginias, you can really expect long legs with most Virginia blends because they have a high natural sugar content. There's a lot of natural fuel for fermentation to take place. You need sugar to be able to make alcohol. So with Virginias, I would say that kind of the sky's the limit. I mean, I'm not suggesting like, oh yeah, it's going to peak at like 150 years. Definitely smoked. I mean, just last night we had some cigarettes that someone shared with a group of us who was about 45 years old, and they were Virginia cigarettes, and they were delicious. Typically, I recommend 10 to 15 years for most Virginia or Virginia breed blends, but that's also personal preference largely. Oh, wow. Yeah, the bulging is usually a good sign that there's fermentation that's taking place because a byproduct of that is CO2. Oh, they do have air in them. Yep. So they're just seams. They are airtight, but they are not air. They haven't had any air removed. The top of my head, you would think that would be a number that I would be able to spit out to you. I actually don't have that firm number. It's for 225 that are C&D branded, and then so I have Bees and Briar Works and Two Friends and Captain Earl's and Warped. So we make a lot of blends.
All right.
Yeah.
Have we got your questions in, Jeremy?
What's that?
I say, anybody else have any other questions?
Right.
All right. Well, we appreciate Jeremy doing this for us. Everybody give him a round of applause.
Thank you guys so much.
It's impressive, man. I really enjoy it. I've seen you do this 3 times now, but it's always so awesome to watch every time. So, like Jeremy said, he's going to actually put that blend that he just made in that jar. You'll be able to see it up front. Maybe even get a bowl of it, I guess. And then we do have some of the Muletown mixture tins left from this year's batch. You can get those over at the Briar Works and like C&D tables on that far wall, or at the in the storefront as well. So get them while they last. There's probably not a ton left, but a decent amount. So.
That's true. Thanks again,
Thank
guys.
you, everybody.
Hey, welcome back. What did you think of that blending demonstration? It was pretty awesome, wasn't it? It's really cool to see the ingredients and the variety that goes into it, even ingredients that really don't actually partake their own flavors for what Jeremy was trying to get out of the blend. And that's just really cool. You know, whether it was the honey or the vodka, it's just really, really cool seeing, you know, kind of how he was going through the process and what it took to really, really mix in, these aromatic qualities to this blend. So I thought it was awesome. I thought it was really cool. If you want to check out real quick what the unedited version sounded like versus the edited sound like, listen in right now.
Yeah, like Pete said, longtime friendship between Cornell and Deal and the Briar Works fellas. Yeah, like Pete said, longtime friendship between Cornell and Deal and the Briar Works fellas.
Pretty cool, wasn't it? It's kind of crazy what you can go with technology these days. But anyways, stay tuned. We've got one more of these coming where we're going to actually hit some vendors. We're going to get more of a personal, set of interviews as well. So I'm super excited about it. Stay tuned. You got the vendors coming up. You got Jeremy. You got just be ready. Okay. The big man himself, the owner of Briar Works, is going to is gonna partake in said interview. So just stay tuned for that. All right, everybody. We'll see you next time on the last part of this series for the Muletown Pipe Show 2022. We'll see you there.